Good evening to you. In just a moment, we'll take you through our press preview, a look at what's in the morning papers. Everyone's standing by, raring to go. Before we do that, let's just run you through the top stories. And Labour's been told to rally round its leader, Jeremy Corbyn, despite its historic defeat in the Copeland by-election. Motorists are being warned to reconsider buying a diesel car as a study reveals children in London are routinely breathing in toxic levels of pollution. And Hollywood stars have been protesting against Donald Trump ahead of tomorrow night's Oscars. So it is time for our press preview here on Sky News, and joining us tonight, the writer and columnist Christina Patterson and former advisor to Nigel Farage and co-owner of the website Westmonster, Michael Heaver. Good to see you both. I've got to say, it's got to be the best name for a website, a political website ever.
It's very good.
Thank you very much.
You get 10 points for that.
It's a good start.
What points we give you for what you have to say a little bit later on? We'll wait and see. We'll give you a judgment just before midnight. Let's run through the front pages for you. Sunday Times says the government is planning to limit benefits paid to new migrants coming into the UK. The Sunday Telegraph says Britain's terrorism watchdog is warning that a threat from terrorists is at a level not seen since the days of the IRA in the 70s, and that's because of Islamic extremism. Sunday Express for tomorrow morning says Ian Stewart, who murdered his fiancée, the children's author Helen Bailey, had a Jekyll and Hyde personality and a volcanic temper. Daily Star Sunday says Martin Kemp faces a backlash about an alleged drugs confession. And the Sunday People celebrates a teenager getting a life-saving drug thanks to its readers. So let's go through the selection then, chosen tonight by Christina and Michael. Let's kick off with the Mail on Sunday, should we? And Michael Heseltine, Lord Heseltine, is leading a Brexit revolt.
Well, he's the poster boy, I think, for the 15% of Remainers, the die-hard Remainers that still want to try and overturn the referendum result, I think. You know, this is the guy that basically is stuck in the past, represents the past, was calling during the referendum campaign itself still for Britain to one day join the euro, perhaps. So I think Lord Heseltine is a perfect example, perhaps, of the backwards-looking nature of the people that are left that want to reverse the referendum result. I think the rest of the country's looking forward. I think Heseltine and others like him represent the past, and Brexit is the future now. I think he's for someone like me who's a passionate Brexit supporter, I'm delighted because Lord Heseltine's, you know, about as irrelevant as they come now.
What do you reckon, Christina? I mean,
obviously, I agree with every single word that Michael said. Not. Well, he's not trying to overthrow Brexit. I don't think any of us think that that is feasible at this point. I think he's said he's only rebelled 3 times in his entire career, so this is a big deal.
Yeah, but when he has, he's made a pretty,
he's done it quite dramatically. That's certainly true. What he's talking about is essentially about us not crashing out of the EU without a deal, and the indications are that if that happens, it is going to cost the economy. If we go back to I've forgotten the acronym now. WTO. It's going to be very, very costly. And I think he's just wanting to put some caution there and say, look, we need to have some more caveats. We can't just say, oh, great, this is happening. You know, the people have spoken. Well, 48% obviously were not in favour of Brexit, and I, as anybody watching this programme will know, was one of them. But that's not the issue about whether you reverse it now. The issue is really about the terms and the negotiating position. And he is saying the fact that we've had this vote doesn't mean that everybody has to go, oh, fine, do what you like, we support you, whatever. It's about having some more, it is about having a further vote, but that's on the terms of the deal. It's not about reversing the referendum.
I'm sorry, the unelected Lords pushing for what they're calling a parliamentary veto is exactly the type of thing that makes people now disgusted with the establishment and why so many voted for Brexit. You know, why are the House of Lords and these yesterday's men insisting that they want to sort of second-guess the British public? The British public clearly voted to leave the single market. They clearly voted for border controls and to reduce migration. Now, the fact is, people like Lord Heseltine don't like that, and they are talking about second referendums.
He's talking about trading terms. He's not talking about immigration. He's not talking about... I mean... Actually, you say the people voted to leave the single market.
Absolutely.
We have absolutely no idea how people voted. We can't do a breakdown of that. We only know that when they were given a vote, they said, yeah, let's get out. They didn't. How many people actually knew what the single market was? Did they know about the trading terms?
That's very patronising. That's very patronising. The people didn't understand the argument, so therefore they voted the wrong way.
I think plenty of people didn't understand the argument. We simply can't
What basis do you say that?
Because a lot of the evidence that's come through of when people have been asked, they don't know anything about the single
Completely
market.
wrong. Everyone from Michael Gove to David Cameron to George Osborne, they all said during the debates, during the discussion on this, that went on, you know, for months and months and months, both sides, Leave and Remain, were perfectly clear a Leave vote would mean leaving the single market. To suggest that the British people...
Well, Daniel Hannan, who was one of the key campaigners for Brexit, didn't even want to leave the single market. He was one of the most prominent voices in the campaign.
You've managed to name one. I've named the Prime Minister and the leader of the Leave campaign, or the official Leave campaign, and Nigel Farage and all the rest. I mean, it's a complete red herring.
Is there an argument here to say, you know, as we've heard from the government on this, that the idea of having to get a deal, is that really necessary? We have been there in the past, haven't we, where we've ended up getting a deal for something that isn't a good idea. And we've been told this, you know, no deal is better than a bad deal. Can't we consider that?
Well, I don't know if any of you heard Ivan Rogers speaking to the Select Committee last week, and he is one of the most experienced. He was the ambassador to... I've forgotten his title now.
Basically the EU ambassador.
Yeah. And he... I mean, you could sort of see the faces of even the Brexiteers on the Select Committee freezing as he talked about the complexity of the legislation that needed to be unravelled. I think this idea that you can just kind of bounce out and it's all going to be fine is very naive. I just don't think that's true. Now, I really hope that things are not as bad as many people are predicting, because it's going to be very bad news for the British economy if they are as bad. I genuinely hope that they will be better than that. But people like Ivan Lewis, who know an awful lot about it, are really not very positive about it. And clearly, you know, this is a complicated deal and we need to get the best deal. And if we're already laying our cards on the table and saying, oh, you know, it's fine, yeah, we're happy to leave this, we're happy to leave that, we're happy to go on World Trading Organisation terms, it's just not, we're going to get a really bad deal at this rate.
Let's just look at the facts. We've made clear that we're leaving the single market. Just this week we've had news that Boeing are going to invest £20 million in Sheffield. McLaren are going to invest £50 million in the Sheffield area as well, in factories. Boeing is going to be the first European factory. It's going to be here in Britain. And that's with companies knowing that we're leaving the single market. All of this humdrum...
Plenty of the banks are already talking about leaving.
I don't care what the banks say. The banks poured money into the Remain campaign. You know, Goldman Sachs funneled money into the Remain campaign.
It's not all about
Businesses
Remain and
are investing.
What about the tax take? Who is going to pay for social care when the banks leave this country? That
was the argument for joining the euro, wasn't it? Oh, everyone's going to leave the city of London if we don't join the euro. Everyone's going to leave.
They already are
talk. What about the action? The action is when we didn't join the euro, London survived and thrived, and it will do so once we leave the single market.
Well, do you know what? In all of it, I love the whole Brexit debate. I think it's fascinating. I could sit here with a cup of tea and listen to you, but sadly, I can't do that.
Mouth now.
I like the people at home watching with a cup of tea. I wish I could just join you. It'd be lovely. Sadly, I can't. But actually, sticking with something pretty interesting, I was talking to Diane James yesterday. And all she had to say, very keen to dissociate herself from UKIP now. Nigel Farage doing the same thing, according to the Express. He's fed up with UKIP, as is Aaron Banks, the big money man.
No, look, I think it's a very, very interesting period for UKIP. I mean, I used to work for Nigel.
It's one way of putting it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And obviously I co-own Westminster with Aaron, so I know them both quite well. I think as soon as Nigel stood down as leader, that was always going to be a critical moment for the party in finding its identity and finding a way forward. And I think what Aaron and Nigel are saying, and are very clear on, is that the party must resist the urge to drift to this so-called centre ground. UKIP is a radical party, or it is nothing. It has to talk about things like immigration. It has to talk about issues that the other parties won't touch.
Yeah, but isn't the key problem with UKIP at the minute that it hasn't got a policy platform, which is why it didn't do very well in Stoke?
Well, I agree. I think UKIP, one of the problems Paul Nuttall had, and he was bombarded and barraged, as you expect, as you know, with the Stoke by-election, is that UKIP has to now get on the front foot. And Paul Nuttall has to very clearly say, these are all the reasons you should vote for UKIP. He has to get on the front foot.
What is UKIP for anymore? And apart from the fact that, you know, unfortunately Paul Nuttall appears to be a raging fantasist. So, you know, I mean, how anyone could get through so many press offices and never read their own website and talk about being a footballer and a member of a charity board and having been at Hillsborough and all this stuff. You'd speak as if the media attacked him inappropriately. I mean, this was, apparently a bunch of lies. So, I mean, if this is the chairman...
Because a press officer put something on his website that he hadn't checked?
How many press officers can you have, putting, you know, a whole series of mistakes. But anyway, the guy is, you know, clearly not qualified to be leader of any party, let alone, I mean, you know, even a party like UKIP. But what exactly, does anybody understand what their policy platform is now? We're leaving the EU. What else are you about?
Well, David Davis, the Brexit secretary, is already talking about mass migration continuing after we leave the European Union.
It's going to have
the British people. No, it does not. The British people were very, very clear, and I went around the country with Nigel. They're very, very clear. They want net migration brought down to the tens of thousands, as David Cameron promised. Now, the Tories are already making sounds that they're going to renege on that. And I think this is a huge issue that people are overlooking.
Are the British people that have said that they're so happy for all of this to happen, are they going to work in the cafes and the hotels and white people's bottoms in social care? Who is going to do this?
Who did those jobs before we opened the borders to Eastern Europe in 2004?
Well, a lot of the companies didn't
exist.
British
people did.
A lot of those... Fine. So you know lots of people who are going to take over those jobs on those wages, do you?
Well, absolutely, yeah.
And so you're going to work...
You know what? I know a lot of British youngsters that would like to go and work,
so they'd like
but they find it very, very difficult because there's a complete saturation of unskilled labour.
And they'd like to go and work in East Anglia on seasonal farming and then not have any wages for half the year. They're happy to do that.
Well, bosses may have to start paying a little bit more money, which I think is a very,
very
good thing.
That's fine. Then prices
minimum
will go
wage.
up. Are all these people who voted for Brexit happy? I mean, already inflation's going up. Are they going to pay that much percentage more?
That's not a logical argument, because if you think about it, we had the EU enlargement of open borders in 2004. Did we see a food price decrease from 2004 onwards? No.
So
in the year 2000 and before, British people were doing those jobs.
We know that sterling has already lost 15% of its value. We know that inflation is already going up. So can we just shake on, you think prices are not going to go up as a result of Brexit? Can we shake on that on screen? Let's have a bet on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. OK, fine.
Right, no, but you know why? Because we're now going to be able to open ourselves up to the world. We're now going to be able to do global trade deals. We're now not going to be dictated to by the EU, which is a protectionist racket about where we can and can't have tariffs. We're going to do these deals ourselves. And I think it's going to be amazing economic revolution.
Just to tie it all back with what we've got in the headline here, why is Nigel Farage putting the boot in to UKIP, the party which he led, quite successfully anyway, getting a very, very high profile from it? He said only last week that a win in Stoke-on-Trent was fundamental to UKIP's future, which he didn't get. So obviously he's indicating from that he thinks there are questions over UKIP's future. And Aaron Banks, your partner, saying, well, what? It's not working out? Is it time for something different?
No, look, I think they both care about the party. I think Paul Nuttall's, just come into the job.
But not enough to keep it going, clearly.
Well, no, I think UKIP is going to keep going, and I think I've seen a lot of. No, they've said
they're having a toddler temper tantrum. It's like, ooh, I'm not in.
No, I'm sorry. They care about this party. No, if you're passionate about something and you've devoted your life to it, like Nigel has, of course he's going to have a comment on it. Of course he's going to have an opinion on the way things are going. UKIP is something he's sacrificed so much for. And these people want to see it succeed.
Our country, yes, it happens. But anyway.
These people want to see it succeed. Well, how have he sacrificed the country?
Our future. But anyway, we won't go there. We've already had that argument.
No. That's ridiculous. We're about to embark on an exciting Brexit Britain future. Countries and investment is now flowing into this country. But we do need a strong UKIP, because I believe if it isn't there, we will see people sold out, millions and millions and millions of them, who went and voted leave because they want to see net migration brought down to the tens of thousands. Well, if UKIP isn't there, that won't happen.
As you two talk, I can see from here that my Twitter feed is going bananas. It's so far away, I can't read it. So I'm going to have a read in the break and see what you're all saying about what our guests are saying tonight. And we've got more coming up for you in just a moment. So we're looking through tomorrow morning's papers with Christina Patterson and Michael Heaver. Let's have a look at the Oscars, should we? And why on earth is the Mail on Sunday saying Donald has saved the Oscars, the Donald?
Because the Oscars are really quite boring, and apparently, I don't watch them, but apparently people watch them for the frocks.
Yeah.
And there is a limit, in my view, to how much you can say or think about a bunch of frocks. But this year, there will be all kinds of impassioned speeches from the whole of Hollywood slagging off Donald Trump, and that will certainly be very entertaining. So I might even be tempted to watch some of it.
Well, you should do. Coverage starts 11:30 tomorrow night. As you can imagine here. I mean, I love the Oscars, but I mean, Trump will certainly spice it up a little bit.
Oh, multi-millionaires standing on a platform with other multi-millionaires and attacking Donald Trump, and the fact that ordinary Americans, have caused a political revolution. How edgy. You know, the fact that this is some sort of cool little thing to do now, or Donald Trump's terrible and horrible, basically sums up the huge global revolution we're now seeing. I mean, if you remember, Hillary Clinton before the election stood on platforms of various celebs. I mean, I don't think these people understand how elitist it looks to sort of point your nose down and say, this president you've just voted for, you're all wrong about him, he's an idiot, he's an extremist.
Yeah, he's causing an awful lot of... I mean, look, they're on to a winner in terms of that, because he didn't win the popular vote. It's not how the system works in the States. So actually, there are going to be more people watching who agree with them than who don't.
Come on, that's very unfair.
Michael, what's your definition of elite?
Well, basically, posh people that look down their nose and second guess.
Posh, no.
And second guess.
Because what about an elite sport? Would you say that's a posh person?
No, but these are people that are standing and lecturing America. No, this is important. This is important because this sums up. No, but this sums up.
Come on, Christine, you are just trying to trip him up over something.
This is what goes on in the world now.
This is
what you have in all... Can I just finish my point? All of these multi-millionaires, they were doing it in this country for Brexit. They're doing it in America now. They're basically saying, you're wrong to be concerned about border controls. You're wrong to support a candidate who actually wants to put America first. I mean, the celebrities in this country lining up against Trump. Trump wants to put the UK to the front of the queue. Obama said put the UK at the back of the queue, but somehow Trump's the bad guy. I mean, these people are completely detached from reality.
I wasn't asking about whether Trump is a good guy or a bad guy. Obviously, Trump is a complete sweetheart. I adore him. I think what he's doing in terms of, not letting Muslims into the country is wonderful. I'm all for his environmental stuff.
There's no such thing as a Muslim ban, by the way.
It's all fantastic. I'm thrilled with him. That wasn't the question. The question was, what do you think is elite? Now, in sports, elite means you're very good at something. These actors are very good at their acting. Why on earth it should be a bad thing to be a member of an elite, people are very good at something. I have no idea.
They're elitist.
So why are you slagging off?
They are not even trying to understand.
Excuse me, you wouldn't let me interrupt, so will you just let me finish? Thank you. So why is it a bad thing for people who are very good at something to pronounce on something? Aren't they allowed to have political views as well?
Of course they are.
And who were all these millionaires? You, I think, are funded by a millionaire, or is he a billionaire? Aaron Banks is a rather rich man, so it's all right for your millionaire friend to support a political cause, and it's not all right for other millionaires. But
this isn't a political rally. This is supposed to be an award ceremony.
Excuse me, just back to your argument. You talked about all these millionaire elitists who are voting against Brexit, as if being A, millionaire, and B, an elitist was a bad thing. Well, I'm not all that keen on millionaires, so I don't really discriminate against people on their money, but I don't think there's anything wrong in being good at something and not being a member of an elite.
I think you're missing the point. This looks terrible to ordinary Americans who are being lectured by these people who don't feel the effects of things like mass immigration, illegal immigration. They don't feel the effects because they're completely within a bubble, because they have the wealth and they live in the areas that aren't affected by this. And I think the reason that Trump and Brexit surprised the establishment so much is because these people now live in a parallel society. They do not understand the concerns of the American people, and they're not trying to. They're simply attacking Trump rather than being reflective and a bit humble and saying, well, actually, maybe we're the ones that are out of touch with the reality of what's going on in this country, not Trump.
Well,
After all, he did win the election.
Your thoughts at Sky Stephen? Send them through. Let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph, the front page. Looking at terror. The threat is as bad as it was in the 1970s with the IRA.
Yeah, well, this is obviously bad news, but it's not new news. Max Hill is taking over from David Anderson as the chief terror, as the terror chief in this country. I've done quite a lot of research into the Prevent strategy and into the rise of so-called jihadi brides and the causes for terrorism, and obviously, a lot of the people who are getting caught up in it are bored, disaffected people, and it's a kind of hobby, actually. It's a cool thing to do. So most of it doesn't have very much to do with religion at all. These are people who are going and buying Islam for dummies at the airport. But it is obviously very frightening, and Islamic State is a dreadful new development.
I mean, I think to suggest that Islamic State have nothing to do with Islam is a bit of a naive statement. I mean, second, the real scary point of all this...
Did I say that it had nothing to do with Islam?
You said nothing to do with
No,
religion.
I said that these people very often don't know very much about religion. I didn't say they had nothing to do, because the research shows that many of them are buying things like Islam for dummies. And if you talk to them, I've done a lot of research. How much research have you done in this area? They don't. So
you've met the people that have gone and fought for ISIS?
I have talked to some of them. I haven't met the people who've gone to. I've talked to a lot of people in that world, and I've done a lot of research on it. And actually, the level of ignorance about Islam is very, very high. These people generally know very little about it. It's not got a huge amount to do with religion. It's like joining a club. It's like being in a gang. It's cool stuff.
Well, I mean, the concerning thing for me about this story, and something I don't think is highlighted enough, is the fact that there are already in this country hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jihadists that have gone and fought for ISIS in Syria and have been allowed back into the country, who have been trained, you know, to use weapons and potentially kill people, who are now back in the country. I saw a stat that I think only 1 in 8 of them that have come back have been convicted. I mean, I find it incredibly disturbing that we're allowing ISIS fighters back onto our streets. You might live next door to one. I mean, it's terrifying. Why are we even allowing these people back in?
We've got to be very careful. We've got to be very careful not to stoke. Because we don't necessarily know who these people are, we don't want to stoke suspicion about people.
These are British kids, you know. Some of them come from families that have come from, you know, Somalia or whatever. I can't remember. In this one, they're not mentioned actually, but very often they're British kids. They're born here. They, you know.
Well, look, but I find it terrifying that we're letting them back in the country. These fighters, they're hardened fighters.
Yeah, we're not talking about that. We're talking about many of them in this country.
It gives us a lot to talk about, a lot for you to think about and to tweet about. If you want to get in touch, @SkyStephen. Good to see you both. Very entertaining, very lively. More coming up for you in an hour.